institutions with the potential for transferring learning elsewhere. We just encourage these groups to meet regularly as part of the government's fisheries project. Initially, I would call them to convene meetings. It's actually more social than anything initially. Okay, why don't we have lunch together? And they like the cookies, so there would always be, whatever. So it was something that we made as a joke. We said, okay, well, why don't we come together and have some cookies? Initially, the government representative, who's now our project director, used to be very defensive. But after that back and forth, people begin to know other people as committed professionals in this field. And then there's a greater openness. And then he's the one who says, well, my constraints. I cannot do this because I have to go through several layers before I get an approval. So can you press this through your director, etc., to talk to the minister or secretary? And pretty soon what we had was a group of people who were naturally consulting each other. Eventually they set up their own arrangements for visiting each other's projects and then referring, their partners or their fisher folk to each other's organizations, just so they could share information, find out what's going on, find out, about new technologies, or find out about experiences of other fishing groups that have, been successful in managing their fisheries. This is a group that continues to this day. So initially the foundation was involved in calling the meetings, but gradually shifted it over to the Department of Fisheries. One of the things that we thought was particularly important was to make sure that the message got out to the appropriate level. Every year there is a fish fortnight in Bangladesh. It's a government-sponsored fair where fisheries-related industries and organizations have a chance to exhibit their work. So the institutions involved in this initiative thought that it's a major opportunity to talk about what it is that we do as a group. It was a lot of fun. It was like, hey, this is our booth, what shall we put on the booth? How shall we arrange it? So they came up with an exhibit, a poster that summarized the purpose of the program, the institutions involved, what kinds of activities are being undertaken. And then they said, well, why don't we come up with a fold-out, a one-pager that would explain to whoever might be interested. So we said, okay, and also for practical purposes, what goes into the letterhead, all those, or what goes into the stationery. How do we represent ourselves visually? So we just said, okay, let's have this logo. And there was quite a bit of discussion. What kinds of images do we want to convey? And in a spirit of fun, we just said, well, let's all come back after some time with some ideas or some images. And we would recognize whoever has the best visual on our group and just treat this person out to lunch. And so that was how the logo came to be. It was adopted as the CBFM logo and went into this brochure, this one-page, flyer that we handed out. That has actually helped establish all these linkages. Hey, you're one of us. Recognizing that some are more committed than others. So that is our famous, by now, recognizable CBFM logo that routinely appears now on Bangladesh television during the fisheries fortnight. Is now in pins and T-shirts. So people do have an affinity for the program now. One of the strategies as a grant maker, I think, perhaps, is just developing a shared culture. The concept of developing rituals to recognize the creator of our CBFM logo was a good excuse to get together for lunch. And we said, well, we have some more places on the table. Why don't we invite people from the Ministry of Land? Very powerful ministry, which initially was not interested in cooperating. But all the control over the water bodies really rested with the Ministry of Land. And then we sort of sorted out who would sit with whom. So Iklarm was supposed to sit with the assistant secretary so he can brief him on the project. And we made it a point to go around the table to introduce the organization so he would have heard it. Not too long afterwards, he actually showed interest in visiting the sites. So now they have one more ally in the whole bureaucracy is still constrained by the bureaucratic process, but at least there's one more supportive person. I also encourage them to think about, well, one is excellence. We should build in quality control into the process. So for that purpose, we said that, okay, we'll have yearly workshops open to the public, but before that, an in-house workshop. We were talking about having CBFM awards of recognition, where the pin gets awarded to people of outstanding achievement. At the same time, we also think about how we as a Ford Foundation could also gradually disengage. Along the way, other players come in so that eventually we're able to walk away from an initiative that is healthy and vibrant and self-sufficient. Now there are institutions and organizations of fisher folk in partnership with some of the NGOs and other facilitating institutions that are now able to at least bargain, not on equal terms, but at least on stronger terms than they were able to before. A number of other donors have picked up a lot of the approaches that were tried as part of this initiative. The Bangladesh policy discussion on fisheries management routinely involve the grantee organizations that we work with. So in other words, the agenda which we started out with in 93 are now mainstreamed. So it is no longer just the agenda of this small initiative or the Ford Foundation, but you do see major changes over the years.